The night was heavy, filled with mist and silence. The streets of the ruined city looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. Crumbled walls stood like skeletons of the past, covered in graffiti that glowed faintly under the flicker of dying neon signs. The air smelled of smoke and rust, and the only sound was the distant crackle of broken wires. On one of these dark streets sat a young alien girl. She looked too small for the world around her, too fragile for the harsh city that had no space. For mercy, her hair, long and crimson red, fell in front of her glowing eyes. Her eyes were strange bright orange, glowing faintly in the fog. They marked her as something different, something not human. She sat on an old metal suitcase, the only thing she had left, her shoulders slouched, her hands shaking from hunger. She pulled her jacket tighter around her body, but it did little. Against the cold, the jacket was torn, patched with cloth from different places. It told its own story of someone who had fought to survive for too long. That morning, she had still lived in a small rented room at the edge of the district. It wasn't much, just a corner with a leaking roof and a thin mattress, but it was hers. She paid her rent every cycle with whatever work she could find, cleaning, carrying, fixing, anything that humans would let her do. But work had stopped, and with no work came no money. The landlord had not cared. His voice still echoed in her head. You don't pay, you don't stay. Go find your kind, alien. He had thrown her bag into the street, her suitcase hitting the ground with a heavy thud. People watched. Some laughed, some whispered. None helped. In this city, she was just another shadow, another mouth with no credits to feed. Now, hours later, she was still sitting there, hoping maybe someone would notice, maybe someone would show kindness. But the humans passed her like she was invisible. They walked quickly, holding their coats close, their eyes fixed forward. Some gave her a sharp look, others a cruel smile. A few children pointed at her glowing eyes before their parents pulled them away. Her stomach growled loudly, a painful reminder that she had not eaten since yesterday. She lowered her head, pressing her hand against her belly. She remembered the taste of warm bread, the steam rising from a bowl of soup. But that was only memory now. Reality was hunger. The mist thickened, swallowing the street in a pale blanket. Somewhere far away, she heard the sound of metal striking against stone, followed by laughter. Humans were celebrating in one of the bars. She wished she could be there, even as a worker, just to smell the food again. She closed her eyes, letting herself drift back to her home world. She remembered green skies and tall silver trees. Her people walking freely without fear. She had been happy once, but war had burned her home. She had run to Earth, believing humans might offer safety. Instead, she found coldness sharper than the winter wind. The city lights flickered again, pulling her back to the present. She opened her glowing eyes and looked at her suitcase. Inside were only a few pieces of clothing, a broken pendant from her mother, and a picture old and torn. She touched the suitcase gently, as if it were the last piece of her soul. Footsteps approached. She tensed, lifting her head quickly. A group of humans walked past, their laughter echoing. One of them stopped and stared at her. His eyes traveled from her glowing face to her worn-out boots. Lost alien, he sneered. Better find a hole before the night swallows you. They laughed and walked away, leaving her alone again. She lowered her head once more. Her hands were trembling now, not just from the cold but from the weight of loneliness. Every second felt heavier than the last. The mist grew thicker. The street grew quieter. Her glowing eyes were the only light left in the darkness. She wondered if she would survive until morning. And then a sound. Heavy footsteps. Not like the others, these steps carried power. They echoed through the broken buildings, closer and closer, shaking the ground slightly beneath her. The alien girl's breath caught in her throat. She looked down the street, her glowing eyes wide with fear and curiosity. From the shadows, a figure appeared. A tall human soldier, covered in dark metallic armor that glowed faintly with orange lines. Like fire trapped under steel. He moved with calm strength, each step measured, deliberate. The humans on the street quickly vanished into alleys, avoiding him. No one wanted to cross his path. The alien girl's heart raced. She had no idea who he was, or what he wanted, but she felt the air around him shift. It was as if danger itself walked with him. She stayed frozen on her suitcase, her glowing eyes locked on the soldier. The cold street had never felt so silent, so heavy, so alive with tension. And in that moment, the story truly began. The alien girl sat frozen on her suitcase, staring at the soldier who had just stepped from the mist. His armor gave off a faint glow, orange lines running across the steel as if fire lived inside. Every step he took echoed through the broken street, strong and steady. The humans nearby hurried away, vanishing into alleys, not daring to stay in his presence. Soon, the street was empty. Only the girl and the soldier remained. Her heart raced, but she stayed quiet. She had seen soldiers before, patrolling these ruined districts. They rarely cared for people like her. Most of the time, they looked the other way, or worse, treated her kind with open hatred. She did not know if this one would do the same. The soldier stopped a few feet away, his glowing helmet hiding his face. For a long moment, he simply stood there, studying her. His shadow stretched across the cracked concrete, reaching her suitcase. The silence grew heavier. The girl lowered her head, clutching the edge of her jacket, waiting for him to speak. But he said nothing. He only turned his gaze, as if searching the mist beyond her. Then, without a word, he continued walking down the street, his heavy steps fading into the distance. The girl exhaled shakily, realizing she had been holding her breath. He had ignored her. Perhaps that was better than cruelty. She thought the night would pass quietly again. But soon after, her stomach growled, louder this time, twisting painfully inside her. She winced, pressing her hand against it. The hunger was unbearable now. She could not sit here waiting forever. She needed food. Gathering her courage, she stood slowly, pulling the suitcase handle behind her. The wheels scraped against the broken ground as she made her way toward the brighter part of the district. Ahead, she could see glowing signs of a small market street where humans gathered to eat and drink. As she walked closer, voices filled the air, laughter, shouting, music leaking from old speakers. The smell of roasted meat and bread drifted toward her, sharp and sweet. Her mouth watered, and her steps quickened. She stopped at the edge of the crowd, her glowing eyes catching the light of neon lamps. Dozens of humans sat on metal chairs around open food stalls. Steam rose from bowls, oil crackled on pans. The girl's stomach growled again, so loud that a few people turned their heads toward her. She lowered her eyes, stepping closer. At one stall, a man was selling bread. The golden crust shone under the lamp, and she felt her legs trembling with need. She approached, her voice soft. "Please, may I have one?" The man looked at her with a blank stare. Then his eyes narrowed as he noticed her glowing eyes and faintly patterned skin. "Credits first," he said flatly. I have nothing," she whispered. "But I can." "Then you get nothing." His words cut like knives. He turned away, shouting for his next customer. The girl's chest tightened. She tried another stall, then another. Each time, the answer was the same: no credits, no food. Some ignored her completely, others smirked at her misery. Finally, a group of men drinking at a corner table noticed her. One of them, tall with greasy hair, leaned forward, grinning. "You hungry, alien?" His voice was loud, mocking. The girl froze, clutching her jacket. She nodded once, unsure if she should answer. The man smirked wider, nudging his friends. "I'll give you food, but you'll have to give me something first." His tone carried a cruel edge. His friends laughed loudly, banging the table. Her stomach twisted, not only with hunger, but with shame. She lowered her gaze, her lips trembling. She had come here searching for kindness, but all she found was mockery. The man stood, picking up a piece of bread. He waved it in front of her face, then pulled it back, laughing. "One meal for one favor. That's fair, isn't it?" His friends howled with laughter again. The girl took a step back, her glowing eyes dimming with fear. She shook her head, slowly whispering, "No." But her stomach betrayed her, growling once more. The man tilted his head, smirking. "Think again, alien. You won't last long out here." The noise of the crowd seemed to fade. For a moment, the world grew silent again, except for the pounding of her heart. The man took another step forward, bread still in his hand. The girl trembled, caught between hunger and fear. And then heavy footsteps returned. The laughter of the men cut short. Everyone turned their heads toward the sound. From the mist at the edge of the street, the soldier appeared once more. His glowing armor lit up the smoke around him, casting a cold light across the crowd. The men fell silent, their smirks fading. The soldier walked straight toward the girl, his steps echoing louder with each second. The bread in the man's hand shook slightly before he dropped it back on the table. His friends leaned back quickly, avoiding the soldier's gaze. The soldier stopped between them and the girl. His armored figure towered above her, his presence filling the street with a weight that none dared to challenge. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the soldier turned his head toward the men. His voice came low and cold, like steel scraping against stone. Leave. The men needed no second command. They grabbed their drinks and hurried away, disappearing into the shadows. The crowd scattered, pretending to be busy, not daring to look at him. The alien girl stood frozen, staring up at the soldier. She did not know whether to thank him or fear him. His helmet hid his face, his expression unreadable. The soldier finally looked down at her. The orange glow from his armor reflected in her eyes. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "You don't belong here." The girl's breath caught in her chest. She wanted to speak, but no words came. The soldier turned slightly, as if expecting her to follow, and in that moment, she realized her fate was no longer in her own hands. The night grew darker, and the mist hung heavy in the air as the soldier's glowing armor lit the ruined street. The alien girl followed his movements with wide eyes, her heart pounding inside her chest. He stood tall, silent, and unshaken, as though he was carved from steel itself. The crowd that had once mocked her was gone now. Scattered like frightened birds, only she and the soldier remained, their presence filling the empty street with quiet tension. He turned and began to walk slowly, his heavy boots striking the ground with sharp echoes. Without looking back, he spoke in a low voice that carried through the mist. "Follow me." The girl hesitated. Her glowing eyes flickered with fear and confusion. She clutched the handle of her old suitcase tighter, her fingers trembling. Should she trust him? He had just protected her, but she did not know why. Humans rarely helped her kind without reason. What if he had only saved her for his own cruel purpose? Her stomach twisted again, reminding her of her hunger. Her body was weak, her spirit even weaker. If she stayed here, she would starve. With a deep breath, she rose from her suitcase and began to follow the soldier. The mist wrapped around them as they moved deeper into the ruins. Crumbled walls and broken machines lined the path. The sound of their footsteps echoed like drums. In the silence, the girl pulled her jacket closer, her suitcase rattling behind her. She kept her eyes fixed on the glowing lines of his armor, each step pulling her further away from the street where she had begged for food. For a long time, neither spoke. Then, without turning his head, the soldier finally broke the silence. "What is your name?" The girl's voice was soft, shaky. "Lyra." The soldier gave no reply. His glowing armor continued to cut through the mist like a moving flame. After a while, she found the courage to ask, "Why? Why did you help me?" His steps did not falter, his voice calm and sharp. "Because no one else would." She lowered her head, confused by his words. Humans had always looked at her with hatred, disgust, or pity, but this man was different. His voice held neither kindness nor cruelty, only something heavy, something she could not yet understand. They reached the end of the street, where the ruins opened into a wide square. Broken lamps hung from tilted poles, their weak light flickering. In the center stood the remains of a fountain, now dry and filled with dust. The soldier stopped there, finally turning to face her. His helmet hid his face completely, but the glow from his armor reflected in her orange eyes. "You don't belong here," he said again, repeating the words from before. Lyra's lips trembled. "Where should I go? I have no home. No one will take me in." The soldier tilted his head slightly, as if studying her. His silence pressed down on her until she could not bear it. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Do you mean I should leave this city, leave this world?" Still, he did not answer. Instead, he stepped closer. Towering over her small frame, she felt her chest tighten, fear mixing with hope. His presence was heavy, but it was not the same as the mocking humans. There was something hidden beneath his armor, something she could not yet see. He raised a hand slowly, pointing toward the suitcase she clutched so tightly. "Is that all you have?" She nodded weakly. "Yes." He lowered his arm. For a moment, he stood in silence, his breath steady behind the mask of his helmet. Then he turned and walked toward a narrow path between two broken buildings. The mist curled around him as he moved. Without looking back, he spoke once more. "If you want to live, follow me." Her heart skipped a beat. The choice pressed down on her. She could stay behind, starving and alone. Or she could step into the unknown with this mysterious soldier who had saved her once already. Her suitcase rattled as she dragged it forward, her legs weak but her spirit holding on. She followed him. The narrow path twisted through shadows, leading them deeper into the ruins. Faint lights blinked on old screens still clinging to the walls, showing broken messages from another time. The soldier's glowing armor lit the way. At last, they reached an abandoned building. Its windows were shattered, its roof half collapsed. He pushed the heavy door open with one armored hand and stepped inside. The air was cold, smelling of dust and iron. He stood in the middle of the empty hall, waiting for her. When she entered, dragging her suitcase, he spoke again. "This place is empty. You can stay here for now." Her glowing eyes widened. She had not expected this. Shelter, even if broken, even if cold. It was more than she had since the landlord cast her out. Her voice trembled. "Why are you helping me?" The soldier was silent for a long time. Finally, he answered, "I don't know yet." He turned away, stepping into the shadows of the hall. The glow of his armor slowly faded until only the dim light of the ruined city remained. Lyra stood alone, clutching her suitcase. She felt fear, but also something new, something she had not felt in many nights, a spark of hope. But she also knew hope was dangerous. In this city, nothing was given freely. Even kindness carried a price. And as the mist pressed against the cracked windows, she wondered what price she would have to pay. The abandoned building groaned under the weight of time. Cracks ran across its walls like scars, and the air was filled with the smell of dust and rusted metal. Lyra stood near the doorway, clutching her suitcase, unsure if she should step further. Inside, the soldier's glowing armor was the only light in the hall, a dim orange pulse that flickered like a heartbeat. He stood in silence, his broad frame still as stone. She could not see his face behind the helmet, only the cold reflection of her own glowing eyes in the visor. He had brought her here, but she still did not know why. The soldier finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You should rest. You look weak." Lyra lowered her head, embarrassed. Her stomach growled softly, betraying her hunger again. She whispered, "I cannot. I have not eaten." He did not move. He did not sigh or scold. He simply reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small ration pack. He tossed it to her, the package landing softly in her hands. She stared at it, her orange eyes widening. Food, real food. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she could not breathe. "Eat," he said. She opened the pack quickly, though her hands shook so badly that she nearly dropped it. Inside was a dense piece of bread and a small container of protein paste. She ate slowly, almost carefully, as if afraid it would disappear. Every bite filled her with warmth she had forgotten. Tears welled in her glowing eyes, though she tried to hide them. The soldier turned away, walking deeper into the hall. His heavy boots echoed against the cracked floor. His voice drifted back to her. "What were you doing on that street?" Lyra swallowed her food before answering. I was thrown out. I could not pay the rent." The soldier stopped, but did not turn. His silence was heavy, pressing on her chest. She forced herself to continue. "I tried. I worked. But humans stopped giving me jobs. They said I was not needed. They said aliens take too much." Her voice broke. She wiped her eyes quickly, ashamed to show weakness. The soldier finally turned his head slightly, his visor glinting in the dim light. "And so they cast you out." She nodded silently. Her glowing eyes met his visor for a brief second before she lowered them again. The soldier stepped closer, his presence filling the space. "You should have left this city." Her lips trembled. "I have nowhere else to go for a long time." Neither spoke. The building creaked around them, the mist pressing against the broken windows. Lyra clutched her suitcase tightly, her heart beat loud in her ears. At last, the soldier spoke again. His tone was not cruel, but it was sharp. "Do you know what people here say about your kind?" Her body stiffened. She had heard the whispers many times before, but hearing it from him was different. Still, she nodded faintly. "They say we are weak. They say we do not belong." The soldier stepped back, his armor glowing brighter for a moment. "They fear what they do not understand, and when humans fear, they turn to cruelty." His words carried weight, heavier than stone. Lyra looked up at him, shocked. Was this a confession or a warning? She could not tell. The soldier's voice lowered, almost as if speaking to himself. "I have seen it before. Entire worlds burned because fear became stronger than reason." He turned and walked toward the doorway, his armor glowing faintly against the mist outside. Lyra stared after him, the bread still clutched in her hand. She wanted to ask more, to understand who he was, but her voice refused to rise. He paused at the doorway, his back to her. "Stay here tonight. It is not safe outside." She wanted to ask, safe from what? But before she could, he stepped out into the mist, his figure swallowed by the night. The sound of his footsteps echoed until it faded into silence. The hall grew cold without his presence. Lyra sat down against the wall, hugging her suitcase. The ration pack warmed her stomach, but her mind raced. Who was this soldier? Why had he helped her? Her eyes drifted to the broken windows, where the fog pressed like ghostly hands. Somewhere beyond, humans were laughing, drinking, living without care. And she was here, hidden in a ruin, kept alive by a stranger in armor. Exhaustion finally weighed her down. Her glowing eyes closed slowly, and sleep pulled her into restless dreams. She dreamed of her home world, the green skies, the silver trees. The sound of voices filled with warmth, but the dream burned away, replaced with fire and screaming. The memory of war that had driven her to earth. She woke with a soft cry, her body shaking. The hall was still dark, but something had changed. She felt it in the air, heavy and sharp. Footsteps, not the soldiers. These were lighter, quicker. Many of them. Her heart raced as shadows moved across the broken windows. Human voices whispered outside. Cruel laughter carried into the hall. She held her breath, pressing her back against the wall. They had followed her. Perhaps they had seen her come here. Perhaps they wanted to finish what the soldier had interrupted. The door creaked. A hand pushed it open. Lyra's glowing eyes widened in fear. The door creaked open wider, and a sliver of mist rolled into the hall. Lyra's glowing eyes fixed on the shadows as several figures slipped inside. Their boots scraped against the cracked floor, their laughter hushed but sharp, like knives. Hidden in the dark, the smell of cheap alcohol clung to them, and their voices carried the tone of men who hunted for sport rather than need. "There she is," one of them whispered, pointing toward her glowing eyes in the dim light. "I told you she'd be here." The alien rat found a hole to hide in. Lyra clutched her suitcase tight against her chest, her back pressed hard against the wall. Her breath came fast, shallow, as if the air itself had turned heavy. She wanted to run, but her legs felt frozen. Another man stepped closer, grinning wide. "Thought you could run from us? You begged for food like a stray animal. Now you'll learn what humans demand in return." Their cruel laughter echoed off the broken walls, the sound wrapped around her like chains. She shook her head quickly, whispering, "Please, leave me." But mercy was not in their eyes. The first man reached out, his dirty hands stretching toward her hair. Before his fingers could touch, a sharp metallic sound filled the air. The men froze. It was the sound of heavy armored boots striking the ground. From the shadows at the far end of the hall, he appeared. The soldier. His armor glowed faintly, lines of orange light cutting through the darkness like fire awakening in the mist. His presence filled the room with a weight that pressed down on everyone inside. The men stepped back slightly, fear flickering in their eyes, though they tried to mask it with bravado. One of them spat on the floor. "You again." "What, the alien's pet protector now?" The soldier said nothing. His visor reflected the glow of Lyra's terrified eyes as he stepped closer. Each of his heavy steps made the floor groan, the sound growing louder, heavier, until the men seemed smaller in his shadow. "You think your armor scares us?" Another shouted. Though his voice shook, he pulled a knife from his belt, the blade catching the dim light. "This district doesn't belong to you. Walk away." The soldier's voice finally broke the silence, cold, steady, unshaken. "You should not have come here." The man with the knife smirked, but his smirk cracked as the soldier moved in a single, fluid motion. The soldier's armored hand shot forward, gripping the man's wrist. The knife clattered to the ground. The soldier twisted once, and the man cried out in pain before being thrown against the wall with a heavy thud. Dust fell from the ceiling as he groaned on the ground. The others stumbled back, their courage draining quickly, but one shouted, "He's just one man," and rushed forward, to followed behind. The soldier moved like a storm. His fist crashed into the first attacker's chest, the man flying backward across the hall. His armored shoulder slammed into the second, sending him spinning to the floor. The third barely raised his hand before the soldier grabbed him by the collar and hurled him out through the broken doorway into the mist. Silence fell again, broken only by the groans of the defeated men. The soldier stood tall, his armor glowing faintly as he turned his head toward the last one still standing, the first man who had spoken. His eyes wide now with fear. The man backed away, stammering, We didn't mean, she's nothing, just an alien." The soldier stepped closer, his voice dropping like iron. "Leave, now." The man didn't argue. He bolted for the door, stumbling over his fallen companions before disappearing into the night. One by one, the others dragged themselves away, limping into the mist until the hall was empty again. Lyra still sat pressed against the wall, her suitcase clutched to her chest, her glowing eyes wide with shock. The soldier stood in silence for a moment, watching the doorway until the last echoes of footsteps were gone. Then he turned back to her. Her lips trembled, her voice barely a whisper. Why do you keep helping me?" The soldier walked slowly toward her, his glowing armor casting long shadows on the walls. He stopped just in front of her, towering above her small frame. For a long time, he said nothing. Then his voice came low, heavy with something deeper than she expected. "Because I want to know if compassion still exists in this world." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, unsure how to answer. No human had ever spoken to her like this, not with cruelty, not with pity, but with a strange kind of searching. He turned slightly, looking toward the broken window where the mist pressed against the glass. His next words were softer, almost, as if he spoke more to himself than to her. "I've seen humans destroy what they fear. I've seen them strip worlds of life, all in the name of survival. But I've also seen moments, rare moments, when kindness changes everything." He looked back at her, his visor reflecting her glowing eyes once more. "I want to know which kind of human I am." The weight of his words sank deep into her chest. She wanted to believe him, to trust him, but fear still clung to her heart. She hugged her suitcase tighter, whispering, "And if you decide I am not worth saving?" The soldier's silence stretched for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the doorway, his armor glowing brighter as he moved. Before stepping out into the mist, he spoke one final time. "Then you will still have lived one more night." His figure vanished into the fog, leaving her alone again. But the fear inside her was no longer the strongest feeling. Something else had taken root, something small but powerful, hope. The night dragged on, heavy and cold inside the abandoned hall. The broken windows rattled softly whenever the wind pressed against them, and the faint glow from the street lamps outside flickered through the cracks. Lyra sat curled against the wall, clutching her suitcase, her glowing orange eyes half closed from exhaustion. She had tried to sleep again, but the memory of the men who had entered kept her awake, her body trembling at every sound. When the door creaked open, her heart nearly leapt into her throat. She gripped the handle of her suitcase tightly, ready to flee. But the sound of heavy boots told her who it was before she even looked. The soldier stepped back into the hall, his glowing armor faint against the mist that followed him. He walked slowly, his presence filling the silence as if he carried the weight of the night itself. "You are still awake," he said, his voice even, calm. Lyra lowered her eyes. "I cannot rest, not after what happened." He stopped a few feet away, folding his armored arms across his chest. "Fear keeps you alive, but it will also eat you if you let it stay too long." She raised her head, staring at him through the dim light. "Why do humans hate us so much? What have we done to them?" The soldier was quiet for a long time. His visor hid his face, but his silence spoke volumes. Finally, he answered, "It does not matter what you did. It matters only what they believe you did. To humans, fear is easier than truth." His words cut through her like a blade. She lowered her head, her voice trembling. "Then I will always be hated." The soldier's armor glowed faintly brighter as he stepped closer. "That depends on you, and on me." Her breath caught. She did not understand what he meant, but his presence drew her in, as if there was something in him she could not ignore. He motioned toward the far side of the hall where a broken table stood. He pulled a chair from the debris and sat heavily, the sound of his armor grinding softly against the wood. For the first time since she had met him, he seemed less like an unshakable wall, and more like a man carrying a weight too heavy for one person. "You said you lost your home," he said, his tone low. Lyra nodded. "The war destroyed it. I escaped with others, but not all survived. Earth was supposed to be safe. And now you see what Earth really is." Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. "Cold, cruel." The soldier leaned forward, resting his armored elbows on his knees. His visor tilted slightly, as though he was studying her face. "Let me ask you something. If I were the one cast out, alone, starving on your world, would your people show me mercy?" The question struck her like a sudden storm. She froze, unsure how to answer. The soldier waited, unmoving, silent, his presence demanding truth. At last, she whispered, "Yes." "Would they feed me?" He pressed. "Yes," she said again, her voice stronger this time. "Would they shelter me?" Her glowing eyes lifted to meet the dark visor. "Yes, because compassion is not weakness. It is survival." The hall fell silent after her words. The soldier leaned back in his chair, the armor creaking softly. For a long moment, he did not reply. But then, almost too quietly to hear, he said, "Strange. I want to believe you." The soldier rose to his feet, his tall frame towering once more above her. His voice was harder now, sharper. "But words are easy. Survival is not." He walked toward her, his boots striking the cracked floor. "If you want to live, you must prove that your compassion is not just a story you tell yourself." Her stomach tightened. She looked up at him nervously. "How?" He paused in front of her, his glowing armor casting long shadows on the wall. His voice came slow and heavy. "By showing mercy even when you are given none. By standing when the world pushes you down. By not becoming what they want you to be." Her chest rose and fell quickly, her breath sharp with fear and determination. She did not know if she had that strength, but his words clung to her like fire, sparking something she thought she had lost. The soldier turned toward the doorway again. "Rest while you can. Tomorrow will test you." Her glowing eyes widened. "Test me? With what?" He did not answer. He stepped into the mist once more, his figure fading like a shadow swallowed by the fog. Lyra sat alone again, the silence thick around her. But now her heart felt different. Fear still lived there, yes, but so did something else. A spark, a challenge, a question that burned deep inside. Could she prove him wrong? Could she show that compassion was stronger than cruelty? She closed her eyes, holding the broken pendant from her suitcase in her hand. For the first time since she had been cast out, she whispered not in despair, but in hope. "Tomorrow," she said softly to herself, "I will survive tomorrow." And though the night was still cold, the glow in her eyes burned brighter than before. The gray light of dawn filtered through the broken windows, soft and weak against the dust-filled air. Lyra stirred from uneasy sleep, her body stiff from resting on the cold floor. The abandoned hall smelled of rust and damp concrete, but for the first time in days, her stomach wasn't empty. She still tasted the soldier's ration on her lips. Her glowing eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the pale light. The city outside remained quiet, wrapped in mist. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe she was safe, but the memory of the soldier's words echoed in her mind. Tomorrow will test you. The door creaked open, and heavy footsteps entered the hall. She didn't flinch this time. She knew who it was. The soldier stepped inside, his armor glowing faintly with lines of orange, as if carrying the fire of the morning inside it. "You survived the night," he said simply. Lyra sat up, brushing dust from her jacket. "I tried." He studied her in silence for a moment before speaking again. "Now comes the bargain." Her heart tightened. "What do you mean?" He walked closer, his presence as heavy as ever. "I told you yesterday words are easy. Mercy is not. Today, you will face the truth, and I will decide whether you live or fall." Fear crawled through her chest. She rose to her feet, clutching her suitcase like a shield. "Why me? Why are you testing me?" The soldier tilted his helmet slightly, his voice sharp but calm. "Because you are what humans fear, and if I can see compassion in you, then perhaps there is hope for them." Before she could answer, the door burst open again. Lyra gasped as 3 figures stormed. Inside, different men this time, but with the same cruelty in their eyes. They carried makeshift weapons, broken pipes, and chains. "There's the alien," one of them spat. "Word spreads fast. She's hiding with a soldier's pet armor. Let's see if she's worth anything." Lyra stepped back quickly, fear burning in her chest. But the soldier raised a hand, stopping her. His voice cut through the hall like steel. "Do nothing." Her glowing eyes widened. "What? You want to prove compassion is not weakness? Then this is the moment. If you fight, you become like them. If you flee, you are nothing. Show me what you truly are." Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. The men moved closer, grinning, swinging their chains. She wanted to run, wanted to scream. But the soldier's voice anchored her in place. "Stand," he commanded. "Face them." Her legs shook, but she forced herself to plant her feet. The men sneered at her trembling form, laughing cruelly. One of them raised his chain high. The soldier didn't move. He only watched. At the last second, Lyra raised her hands not to strike, not to shield, but to beg. Her glowing eyes met the man's, full of desperation. "Please, I don't want to fight. I don't want harm. I only want to live." Her words struck like a spark. The man froze mid-swing, staring at her eyes, her trembling body, her voice that carried no hatred, only truth. His chain wavered, his grip faltering. His companion shoved him. What are you doing?" Hit her. But the man lowered the chain slowly, unease spreading across his face. The laughter in the room dimmed. In that silence, Lyra spoke again, her voice breaking but steady. "You hate me because I am not human, but I am hungry like you. I am cold like you. I only want to survive, like you." The hall went quiet. The men shifted uncomfortably. One spat on the ground and muttered, "She's not worth it." With a grunt, he turned and walked out. The others hesitated, then followed, leaving the hall empty once again. Lyra collapsed to her knees, shaking, tears slipping from her glowing eyes. She had not fought, had not run. She had stood, weak but unbroken. The soldier stepped closer, his heavy boots echoing in the silence. He looked down at her for a long time, his visor hiding whatever thoughts lay behind it. At last, his voice came low and final. "You passed." Her breath caught. She looked up at him, confused. "Passed? You showed them mercy when they would have given you none. You stood when every part of you wanted to run. That is not weakness. That is strength." Her glowing eyes widened, tears falling freely now. "Then, you will let me live?" The soldier bent slightly, placing a ration pack on the ground before her. His armor glowed brighter, like embers stirring in the dark. "Live, eat, survive. But remember this is humanity's coldest bargain. Trust is never free. Hope is never free. But you have shown it can still exist." He turned toward the doorway, his tall frame once again swallowed by the mist outside. His final words echoed through the hall as he vanished. "Do not waste the chance I've given you." Lyra clutched the ration pack, her tears dripping onto the cold floor. For the first time since she had been cast out, she felt not just fear, but purpose. She had faced cruelty and still chosen compassion. Her glowing eyes lifted to the broken window. Where the pale light of dawn cut through the fog, the city was still cruel, still cold. But now, deep inside her, something new burned quietly, a spark that no mist, no hunger, no hatred could take away.